All right, guys. Hey, let's talk a little nitrogen this morning. Non-farming buddy called. His neighbor was out on the early tassel corn and was putting out nitrogen. And to him, that seems silly because the corn is already green, but the guy's out putting more nitrogen. I told him just calm down, calm down. It's not an evil farmer scenario. It's he's trying to do the best by his crop. So there's a mountain of data saying that if a farmer spoons feeds, makes several passes out with nitrogen, and now the data of banding next to the row versus broadcast or even banding in the center of the row has a tremendous better effect. Um, the efficiency of the nitrogen is there. The value of the dollar goes further. Every N credit goes a little further. So then guys are realizing they can start to pull back on some N credits, or they're gaining yield by doing the same amount, just better. So what the neighbor was doing is at that time of the year, the corn is looking for a lot of nitrogen to finish vegetative growth and to start the reproductive cycle. That plant really wants a huge amount of nitrogen. It's not a linear thing. It's not like every day it needs one N credit. You get it starts out not much, and then there's kind of a surge, and then it kind of down, and then it really picks up at this time of the year. So your neighbor is just trying to do a good job instead of blowing all the nitrogen out ahead of the planter, which is a lot of research starting to show that that's how we start to get nitrates into our wells, because that nitrogen is sitting there for so long. It's not all of it's being utilized. A lot of it gets leached away from the plant, and a certain tiny, small, minuscule amount keeps going down through the soil. Nitrogen is very mobile. Um, and so there's a ton of data that I can't fathom nowadays why anybody would be broadcasting ahead of their planter with all the data that's out there with the cost of N credits. I can't understand, but to each farmer their own, that works for their farm and they're happy with that. I got a deer fly here. Um, they're happy with it and it works for them. But come fall time, you can see, yeah, boop, you can see to that neighbor, to the non-farming buddy, I told him to keep an eye on it to see how green that field stays to the ground versus some of the other neighbors that put their nitrogen out ahead. At the bottom, corn will start to fire the bottom leaves as it starts to run out of nitrogen and as the plant starts to dry down, as the cob of corn is reaching maturity, you'll start to fire the bottom from the ground up. The guys that have a better nitrogen program, that bottom will stay green longer. You'll see it sometimes on some years is that early fire on the bottom. If it's a great potential year, you can go out and look at the ears and you'll start to see a little more tip back than normal where the kernels haven't filled the cob because it ran out of nitrogen credits. As farmers, nitrogen's kind of a fussy bugger. Um, One, you have to use what's locally available to you. Plants only take ammonium and nitrate. We can't go to the co-op and buy a truckload of ammonium or nitrate. They don't exist. What we can buy is the one product would be a urea. The other would be a liquid nitrogen, like a 28%, not liquid nitrogen like what you're seeing on tanks and TV, but UAN, urea ammonium nitrate at 28 or 32%. Locally, we have 28% to us, and anhydrous ammonia. So anhydrous ammonia sounds a lot like ammonium, which makes anhydrous a very quick to the plant product because the ammonia just needs a quick conversion to ammonium, and then the plants can take it up. Anhydrous is the cheapest of the three. It's fast to apply. It's banded in the soil, so you get the efficiency of banding, plus with its positive, negative charges through the soil, it holds a little bit better to prevent leaching. It can have additives added to it to help hold it in the soil better so it doesn't move around too much. But there's a huge safety factor. You really, really got to watch it with the anhydrous tanks and just wear your PPE equipment, take your time, and just kind of do some inspections once in a while. Do a really good job, and it's a great product. Every once in a while, every year you hear of a couple people that get caught with their pants down that they just well, I've been doing it this way for 20 years, and gosh, you know, that valve just never failed me before, and all of a sudden a valve fails or something, and then you've got a gas leak, and with any luck, you can crawl away from it to get to fresh oxygen, because if you inhale it, it'll drop you. It will drop you. So there's a huge risk factor. Nobody really has to store much anhydrous. I'm sure maybe in large farms, and there are sectors that you can store it on the farm. It's easy to store. You just get a large tank that's made for it. 28%. Again, there's a great aftermarket, or not aftermarket, there's a great support system for the leaching and the volatilizing of it, so you can stabilize that end so it stays where it is. It's great. You can inject it in the ground, you can surface band it, you can mix it with many other products, many other nutrients. You can use it as a carrier in the sprayer like we were talking about to burn plants down. It is a fantastic product. It's probably the most expensive of the three. Well, not probably, it is the most expensive of the three here. And it stores very well. You just put it in some tanks, what you don't use up. The next spring, you just agitate the tank a little bit. If it salts out a little, you just agitate it up a little bit, blend some new stuff in, and you're good to go. You can do mixing at home with it. That's an awesome feature, is you can do your own blending with it. Urea, that's what you're going to see at your lawn and garden stores when you get a little bag of 10-10-10 or 10-0-10. That's urea. It applies very easy. Again, you can band it, you know, mechanically. You can knife it in the ground. You can broadcast it. Most people broadcast it. Again, there's a good source from the industry to treat it so it doesn't volatilize or leach. When I speak about volatilizing, what I'm saying is if you broadcast spread that nitrogen product, the 28% or the urea, you put it out there, whether it's surface band or broadcast, it's on top. If there's enough moisture, it will start to do the conversions. The bacteria in the soil will start to convert whatever product you have, will start to try to get it to either the nitrate or the ammonium. And then at that point, in that conversion, there's a moment where it's ammonia, and ammonia is the nitrogen that you can smell. Like if you opened up an old silo, or when you agitate manure, that supposedly is the ammonia. So it's the gaseous form of nitrogen, and that's when it just goes into the atmosphere. You're not going to smell it out in the field. It's just going to just float away. If there's a lot of water, if you spread your nitrogen and then get a lot of rain, not a flooding rain, but just like several inches over several days, a beautiful soaking rain, that nitrogen will go with that water through the soil profile, and it'll just run right past your plants. And as long as that water's moving down, some of your nitrogen is moving down with it. So they make additives that help stop that. It helps hold it to the soil better. And then you have a denitrification problem of where water puddles. If water's puddled, you get the denitrification, and that's where the bacteria has to start living off of the hydrogen molecules and the nitrogen. Let's just keep it simple. Let's just say, okay, the bacteria feeds off of the nitrogen because there is no oxygen, and inside nitrogen there is hydrogen and whatnot. So I believe. So then the bugs will eat the nitrogen, to stay alive, since there's no oxygen. And then when the water disappears and your plant is looking for nitrogen, then there's no nitrogen left. So it's kind of a funny thing. A farmer needs to work with his support staff, the local co-op or his chemical buyer or whatever, to make sure he's doing a good job with his nitrogen that he's buying, to make sure that it's not running off into creeks, that it's not out there too long, and it's leaching through the soil. Minnesota just had a nitrogen regulation this spring. There's a huge sector in Minnesota that is a typical fall band anhydrous ammonia. Well, now they're finding nitrates in wells. And of course, the first thing they do is blame farmers for it. And the first thing the farmers do is blame the cabin people and city municipalities for dumping raw sewage in rivers and stuff like that. And nobody balks about a city that dumps several million gallons of raw sewage in a river at every rain event. But if a farmer spills 100 pounds or uses an extra 10 pounds of fertilizer to an acre, let's regulate that and let's get all up in arms. But you can't argue the fact that if for decades and decades they've been putting nitrogen out in the fall, that there hasn't been a tiny percentage of that that's making it down into the well water. There's nitrates in the well. There's no disputing that. And a tiny percentage is coming from farmers that were applying it in fall anhydrous. Even if they're doing the best they can, that's just physics. That's just how it's going to be. You're not going to have 100% of your N credits there. Then by the time that corn gets going and taking up N credits, you will not have 100% there. If it's been out there since last fall, you will lose a couple percent. You will lose a certain percentage to leaching, and it's just going to get down into the well water. That I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong or right. That's just how it works. So they regulated that they can't do the fall application anymore, which, okay, well, we need to take responsibility for our actions. So now you have them farmers that are mad because now they're claiming that with the acres they have, that they can't do this and that, and it's going to be more difficult for them and blah, 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 blah. So there's some turmoil over that. I see both sides. I don't know where to stand on that. I guess I know where I have my personal opinion of that, but I don't know. I don't have a bad opinion. It doesn't affect me. So my opinion is farmers that are in the area, please comply with it so they don't come up with more regulations across the rest of the state. I don't know. But yeah, so that's kind of the gist of it for farmers. Nitrogen's a fussy beast, and a guy really has to manage his dollars because that is a huge part of the sector. And until like alfalfa and soybeans, they produce their own nitrogen. So all summer long, a soybean plant will be storing nitrogen in little modules on the root and nodules, and you'll see the little pea and a half pea sized little lumps on the roots. And then come pod fill time and late vegetative growth time, when they really need that nitrogen uptake, then they just start bringing in their own nitrogen. So that's why I'm using alfalfa, because alfalfa is another one that's going to suck the nitrogen out of the atmosphere and it's going to put it into its own plant. So then following this alfalfa field with corn is I will have enough nitrogen credits out here for 1 year of corn until they breed. Until they can crossbreed a legume. Legumes are alfalfa and soybeans that produce nitrogen. Until they can breed them with a corn plant, this is kind of how it's done. Farm Fanatic and some other guys have said that they've put soybeans into a corn crop to be the nitrogen credit. So there is, and it worked, and it worked very well. My soybeans in the oats crop is the nitrogen source for the oats. So there is alternative out there where farmers, there's some of us that are trying to do a better job than relying on commercial fertilizers. There's no such thing as synthetic versus organic nitrogen. There you have manure and you have green crops that you can get nitrogen credits from, but the nitrogen from the co-op, your commercial nitrogen, isn't, you don't have the organic versus not organic kind of deal. Same with potash and phosphorus. You don't have synthetic potash and phosphorus. They're mined. They're brought to co-ops. In the meantime, they're treated with an acid. So when we get it as a farmer, we blow it on the field. It breaks, them little rocks break down faster. It comes from the earth, gets a little bit of acid, and it goes back to the earth. That's potash and phosphorus. So there is no synthetic stuff that's readily available for us. I don't know about the rest of the world, but for us. So yeah, nitrogen's and it's a huge part of our crop bill, other than the cost of seed. Well, this year, the nitrogen is the most expensive part of my corn production, plain and simple. So that's why we need to do a good job of managing that big percentage of input and investment. And so, guys, add your own 2 cents below about your nitrogen experience and how you guys are doing it and what's working for you, what's not working for you. Let's keep the conversations going. And thank you for watching.